Hello, hi, and welcome to this episode of the Mandy Mayer podcast. I almost said of, you guessed what? Of course you guessed, the Mandy Mayer podcast. As per usual, this is the podcast where we chat all about your health, your fitness, achieving those goals, setting those goals firstly, achieving those goals, and just moving forward with creating a healthier lifestyle by creating healthier habits, and in the process, obviously losing a little bit of fat here and there. And if you've just started listening to this podcast, welcome to anyone that is new here. For everyone that listens to this podcast regularly, and to anyone who's just started watching these podcast episodes on YouTube, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. Like, honestly, I don't think you guys understand how much I appreciate it, purely because there is a lot of work that goes into it, but also because when you are watching it, you're reviewing it, you're listening to it, that really does help boost the algorithm a little bit. And that makes my heart happy, not because it's boosted, the algorithm's boosting it, but it means that the possibility of this podcast reaching more people just gets bigger and better. And I absolutely love that. So I can sit here and talk into this microphone, but it's actually you guys, the listeners, that are really helping me spread the word and helping others by doing that. So again, from my side, just a massive, massive thank you. In today's episode, I'm going to be chatting about motivation, or rather, let's put it this way, the lack of motivation, because I hear in my DMs on a regular basis, Mandy, I'm just not motivated. Or so many people come up to me, not come up to me, but like DM me and say to me, oh, Mandy, how do you always stay so motivated? And I can see that there's this big thing of, oh, I'm not motivated, so I'm not going to do certain things, and that is why I'm not progressing. And a lot of people believe, okay, I'm going to wait, or you're going to wait till you're motivated before you do something. And that is where, you're going to start seeing progress. But that's where we have it all wrong, because a motivation, for example, it doesn't just come and fall into your lap. Like, you literally cannot just sit around and wait for motivation to fall into your lap. You have to action certain things for the motivation to be continuous, for example. So what I mean by that is, even on the days where you don't want to do certain things, the days where you feel like you are not motivated, those are the days where you still got to get up and out there and you got to action certain things, okay? Now, this doesn't mean that you can't tweak your goals a little bit. This doesn't mean that, you have to be at your best every single day. I mean, like I always tell every single member of mine, your best can be different every single day. Right? But again, we literally cannot be sitting around waiting for motivation to fall into our laps, because motivation, it's a strange thing. It just comes and it goes. And it's sort of like, I heard someone once saying, relying on motivation to get shit done is like relying on your buddy who parties till 2 a.m. in the morning to come pick you up at the airport at 4 a.m. in the morning. It's most likely not going to happen, right? So again, I want to touch on motivation, or the lack thereof. And I want to touch also on 3 things that I want to say interfere with your motivation, or that make you feel demotivated. And if you can navigate these 3 things, right, then I can tell you now that you're going to start actioning more things, whether you're motivated or not motivated. And when you action in more things, that's actually where you start seeing progress. And when you start seeing progress, that's, believe it or not, when you start seeing progress, Mandy, tell us something we don't know. When you start seeing progress, you get a lot more motivated, because that power of momentum is going. You've seen the results, you've seen the progress, and all of a sudden you want to do more. Okay, so let's touch on those 3 things that are potentially causing you to be not motivated. Right? So where you wake up and like, oh, I just don't want to do this today. Or, oh, what's the point of actually doing this? Or, oh, maybe I'll wait till next week or the week thereafter to do it, right? Number 1, the thing that is making you feel not so motivated is that number on the scale. I'm just calling a spade right away from the word go. That number on the scale is most likely the thing where you're like, oh, I've been ticking all the boxes for 3 days, and now all of a sudden there's a fluctuation on the scale, and boom, there goes your motivation out the window quicker than I can throw my mouse out the window when I'm frustrated. I have never seen something ruin motivation. What's actually the right way of saying it? I've never seen something sap motivation quicker than I don't even know what, than a minor fluctuation on the scale, or that number on the scale not going fast enough in the downward direction. And immediately, all of a sudden, you become, oh, I'm not so motivated. You become that person. But you forget to look at absolutely everything that you are doing. You forget to look at all the progress that you are making. And in your mind, you're telling yourself that you are not making progress because that number on the scale isn't shifting. And then you're like, oh, well, what's the point of saying no to that extra beer? Or what's the point of saying no to that plate of chips or fries and having a salad instead, because you've been doing that for 4 or 5 days and there's still no shift on the scale. And immediately you're like, well, I'm not motivated to do this anymore. So again, number one, progress with that number on the scale or the shift on that scale. Don't let that be the thing that makes you not motivated. Please, 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 I beg of you, just ignore those minor fluctuations. Figure out where they're coming from, but don't let them dictate how you feel. You continue working on creating healthier habits. You continue ticking those boxes. You continue creating that power of momentum. And I can tell you something, that progress will come your way. It will definitely come your way. But do not be like, oh, I was trying my best, my absolute best for 5 days, and the number on the scale still didn't shift, and now all of a sudden you're not motivated. No, no, no. You are stronger than that. I can promise you that now. You are stronger than that little fluctuation on the scale. Don't let it get to you. Now, the second thing that stands in the way of you being super motivated is comparison. And what I mean by that is you could very well be comparing yourself to someone else, either online or in real life or in a magazine. I don't know. Maybe you've seen someone's transformation picture. Maybe you've read that someone has lost 50 kilograms in 5 weeks. Now all of a sudden you're like, oh my goodness, how are they managing to do it, but you not managing to do it? So you ask yourself that question. And again, it goes back to what I was saying. You're like, I'm doing everything correct. I'm doing everything. I'm ticking the boxes. But Sally from down the road, or Sally who sits next to the printer at work, she did this amazing diet and she lost 50 kilograms in 5 weeks. And you start questioning yourself. And a lot of the times when we comparing ourselves to someone else, that is often where we lose that motivation, because we're like, what are we doing wrong? What are you doing wrong? You're not doing anything wrong, because you have no idea how Sally from the printer lost that 50 kilograms. Now that I think about it, Sally from the printer, maybe she's bragging about losing 50 kilograms in 5 weeks. Maybe it wasn't even 50 kilograms of body fat. Maybe Sally from next to the printer got so pissed off with the printer because it wasn't printing, so she took the printer and threw it out the window, and then she's like, oh, I lost 50 kilograms. It was 50 kilograms of a printer, not of body fat. So again, a silly example, but it just goes to show you don't know what goes on behind the scenes in someone else's life. So just like you don't know what goes on behind the scenes in someone else's diet or in their health expedition or in their fat loss journey, right? So again, please try not to compare yourself to someone else, especially someone else that you don't know, okay? Because that can really interfere with your mindset, and that can make that you lose motivation. Focus on you. Focus on your journey, focus on your expedition, focus on all the amazing things that you are doing, and don't compare yourself to someone else. Fuck man, I've noticed I have compared myself to several other people online, and it makes me feel so shitty about myself, because I'm like, what am I doing wrong? What are they doing right? And immediately I lose that motivation. I somehow don't even want to make content anymore, because I'm like, how can that people make content and get like 1 million views on that content that wasn't even educational? And here I am making educational content and I get 1 view, and it's probably from my mom or my granny. On a serious note though, thank you for everyone that does watch my content, but it just goes to show that even myself, I do catch myself still comparing myself to other people, just maybe not in the fat loss sort of regard or with health anymore for that matter, but with other things. But again, it just goes to show the moment you compare yourself to someone else, that's the moment where it's like, and you just lose that little bit of a spark. So what I've learned is just focus on me. I must focus on delivering the best content that I can, the most educational content that I can, and not worry about what anyone else is doing. And that's how I want to say I stay motivated, but it's not really me staying motivated, it's just me showing up every single day. And now, whilst we're on the social media topic, right, I go back to point number 1. So progress on the scale, for example. If I look at my YouTube videos that I've just started doing, right, so I've just started creating YouTube videos, and I look at it and some of them are like having 1 view, some of them are having 150 views, maybe I think the one with the most views is 1,500 or 1,700 views. And to be honest with you, I know how much hard work, obviously I know how much hard work goes into it because I'm the one putting in the work. And sometimes I sit there and I look at it, I'm like, well, fuck it, man. Like it's just, and that's where I'm like, these numbers, and I'm like, I'm not making any progress. And a lot of the times I lose motivation. I'll be very honest with you. And I'm like, do I need to sit and do this now because it's going to get 10 views? But then I'm like, you know what? It's not about that. It's not about the views, okay? And I know that I have to trust the process. Like, the more I'm going to show up, even when I don't feel like showing up, the more I'm going to create that content, even when I don't feel like creating that content, it's going to help someone out there. And at the end of the day, the more you just repeat these things, the more you are going to see progress, right? So the more I push forward, the more people might share my content. Maybe you will even share this video. I don't know. And if you're listening to this episode of the podcast without the video, maybe you'll even share the podcast with someone at work, maybe Sally from the printer. I don't know. Silly example again, but it's just to show you that if you are basing, I want to say your motivation on the results or on, I've put in so much hard work, but I'm not getting results, just trust the process and keep showing up for yourself. And then also don't compare yourself to Sally from the printer. And that brings me to the third and the final point that sometimes interferes with your motivation. And again, you'll see all of these are like sort of intertwined, but the level of expectations that you've set for yourself. And when I speak of that, I want to put emphasis on that number on the scale, because a lot of the times you can have such huge expectations when it comes to that number on the scale. And you'll be like, oh, I want to lose 4 kilograms in 2 weeks. And it's like, guys, we need to be realistic about it. It's like me saying I want to get 1 million views on a video in a month. I need to set my expectations accordingly and be like, okay, cool. I'm getting 50 views on one video at the moment. Let's aim for 75 views. Again, random example off the top of my head. But it's about setting those expectations and saying, you know what? This is not going to happen overnight. You have to show up even when you don't feel like showing up, because now you've set these really random, ridiculously high expectations. And when you don't achieve what you believe or what you sort of expect to achieve, then all of a sudden you go back to that thing of, oh, well, it's not working, so what's the point of doing it? So you need to adjust those expectations accordingly. And again, I'll go back to that number on the scale. You really need to start shifting your focus away from that number on the scale and shifting it on all areas of progress. Because the moment you do that, right, you're going to realize that, number one, the boxes that you're ticking, they are working. They are really working. The moment that you see you becoming fitter, the moment you're feeling like you have more energy, the moment you feel like, oh, I'm living a healthier lifestyle, all of that is progress. And that's where you'll start realizing, like I said, what you're doing, it's actually working. And you'll find more often than not, I'm not saying you're going to be motivated all the time. We're humans, we're not robots, okay? But what I am saying is that when you start identifying all progress, your non-scale victories, and just everything health related as well, and not only that number on the scale, you realize what amazing changes you are making and what amazing progress you are making. And that's where you're like, okay, cool, this is working. And that's oftentimes where you want to do more. But again, going back to that number on the scale, if you just going to look at that number on the scale and you're going to see, only going to see fluctuations or whatever it is, you're going to lack motivation, because again, you're going to be like, oh, I'm putting in so much hard work, but it's not paying off. But it is paying off. Like, it literally is paying off, because you are creating a healthier lifestyle. So my final words here: don't let Sally from the printer throw you off track. Don't let her be the reason that you're not motivated, okay? Also, the scale, don't let that be the reason that you are not motivated. And also, your levels of expectations, set them accordingly. And lastly, to answer everyone's question, Mandy, how do you stay so motivated? I can tell you now, Mandy is not always motivated. There are many days where I am not motivated. I'm just very action driven, okay? But even in saying that, I mean, what is the time now? I don't even have my watch on, okay? But I think it's something like 7 o'clock at night on a Thursday night. And I know I have to get this episode of this podcast recorded today, because tomorrow I got new member calls, introductory calls. I've got member check-ins tomorrow, and I know it's just going to be crazy tomorrow, which is Friday, right? I only released this episode on a Saturday, but early on a Saturday morning, so none of that's going to make sense to you. What I'm saying is, right now, honestly, I would prefer to be lying in bed with a cup of hot chocolate, watching something on Netflix. But like I said, I know to be motivated, I need to action things. So if I want to continue growing this podcast so that the word can get out there to help people, or if I want to get more views on my YouTube videos, I have to show up for myself. Like, I have to create the content and put it out there. I can't just say, oh, I don't feel like doing it today, so I'm going to skip a week, right? It doesn't work like that either. So again, your action is going to drive your motivation. Very important. There's going to be days where you don't feel like doing things. Sometimes, more often than not, you have to push that ball. You have to suck it up, Buttercup, said in the nicest manner. You have to sort of forcefully push yourself to do the things that you might not feel like doing in that moment in time. On that note, I'm going to love and leave you like I usually do. Keep smiling, keep laughing, and keep being kind to one another. Much love, your friend who is now going to go watch something on Netflix and have a cup of hot chocolate, Mandy.